What's going on, Cage fans? How you guys doing? Today we got Preston Parsons on the show today. How's it going, Preston?
Going good. Enjoying the beautiful Florida weather.
Exactly. Preston Parsons, he is 10-3. He's 1-1 in the UFC, coming off a dominant victory the other week over Elder. How did it feel to get that first win in the UFC?
There's nothing like it. I mean, winning the fight's one thing, and it feels great always. But winning the fight in the UFC, it's like it was a big load off my shoulders, and it felt amazing.
Before we get into talking about your UFC career right now, what I like to do is just leave it over to you. Let you give us a little tutorial on how you broke into the business of MMA and everything that came before that.
Well, I've always been interested in fighting. Before it was MMA, I was super interested in boxing. When I was young, the Rocky movies, and I've said this a bunch now, that's kind of really what got me started with fighting, is just the underdog story and seeing hard out of fighters. But I started training karate when I was really young, about 11 or 12, and I stuck with that for about 2 years, and then got into middle school, and it kind of fizzled out a little bit. But I started training MMA when I was 16. My stepdad introduced me to some Hoist Gracie videos and showed me the UFC fights that were going on around that time, about 10 years ago. And I started hanging out with some of the wrestlers at my high school, and then before long, we were in my front yard wrestling, and the neighbors weren't super appreciative of that, so I had to find a local gym.
And so that was pretty much your entry into wrestling as well. Was some of your friends?
Yes, definitely. And everybody's thrown off when I say this, but I didn't wrestle in high school. I actually didn't really play any sports in high school. I was a little more reserved and a little bit nervous and shy in high school, so I was too nervous to try for the team, which looking back now was a huge mistake.
Did you do any practice with wrestling, or was it just what you did with your friends on the front yard, or just hanging out, and that was just what you've learned from that? Because you, when we see you in your octagon, it looks like you have a pretty good pedigree with the wrestling background.
I had some good wrestling coaches at the first gym I started at. I had a good wrestling coach, Caleb Pelletier. I think he won states 3 times when he was in high school, and he wrestled for West Point. So me and him spent a lot of time together, and he would just beat the crap out of me pretty much and break me. And back then, I would just a win for me was getting on his legs, so there was no really finishing takedowns on him. But I started getting to the point where I would kind of hang with him. But I give a lot of my wrestling credit to my coach Caleb and my other wrestling coach, Josh Pelletier, his brother. I've worked with a lot of good grapplers in the past as well, so it's kind of just the good coaching that I had.
Yeah, and as I see that you stick your gym close to home, right in Jacksonville, at Elevate MMA. Tell me a little bit about Elevate MMA.
Yeah, like you said, it's right here in Jacksonville Beach, and I actually grew up in a house right down the road from here. I was born in Jacksonville, and I've lived here my whole life. In Elevate, me and my partner Cord, we opened it up about 2 years ago. We were at another gym together, and we just kind of talked about it, like it's about time for us to break away and make our own spot to where all the fighters could come. And it's a fighters gym ran by fighters, so it's there's nobody feeling like they're being taken advantage of or anything. But we opened it right in the middle of the pandemic, right in the middle of COVID. September 2020, I think, was our first month.
How much work has that been? Because of course you're trying to run through your MMA career, but now here you go, opening up a gym with your partner. That must put a lot of work into not just training, but now running the gym, because that's your responsibility, is to make sure everything's running smoothly there.
Right. No, it definitely is a lot on my plate. But I feel like it's just made me stronger, tougher mentally. And I have a lot of good amateur and pro fighters here to help me teach the classes and stuff. So when we first opened, it was just me doing everything. It was me teaching all the classes. It was me. My partner's always kind of handled the financial side of everything and
Yeah.
the paying the bills and stuff like that. But as far as coaching and doing private lessons and stuff, it was all me to get the gym going. But now is the time for me to really focus on my career, focus on me. So I have a lot of good help here at the gym.
Now looking over at your career, I've seen about 90% of your wins are by submission. That's crazy for somebody just starting out. Like, how much of your experience do you predicate on the jiu-jitsu side of things? Because, like I said, I think all but one of your wins are by sub.
Yes, yeah, that's right. I had one TKO as an amateur. Um, but yes, my jujitsu, I've done a lot of training in jujitsu, and that's one that kind of came more naturally for me. Striking and jujitsu was like one of the ones that I kind of got right away. Wrestling was actually the hardest one for me to pick up, like the rule set, not going to
Yeah.
your back and all that stuff. But just kind of stuck with it, and I got good at that one too. But I've had a lot of good grappling partners over the years, and a lot of good coaching over the years to kind of get me to where I am with my jujitsu and wrestling.
Yeah, I've watched about like your last 4 or 5 fights between UFC and then of course the regional, and I noticed how fluently you've been able to transition from your wrestling to the jiu-jitsu. Is that something that you've put a lot of work into? Because sometimes some fighters kind of struggle with their transition and it's a little bit slow, but yours seems very fluid. Like you can go from one to another and then right back to it very quickly. Is that something that you pride yourself on?
Yes, that's something I've always felt like I was kind of better at is just being a full mixed martial artist. Being able to throw ground and pound definitely changes the jujitsu a little bit. And I'm always just it makes it feel like a full fight. So I can do ground and pound, jujitsu, wrestling, whatever it takes to win the fight and to hit and not get hit.
What has been the hardest thing training wise that you've had to deal with prepping for fights? Is it like
Um,
cardio? Is it just the training with other people, sparring?
um, I would say wrestling has always been and having good coaches because like here in Jacksonville, I have a lot of support now, but it's finding good coaches is difficult sometimes. But now I have a good team behind me. I'm working with the professor over at Gracie Baja Jacksonville, Professor Roberto. He's given me a lot of good advice and he's kind of guiding me and guided me for my last fight camp. I have Brian Brown at 10th Planet Jacksonville helping me out. My partner Cord is kind of my striking coach. He's the one that drills all the pads with me and stuff like that and works combinations and everything. But I would say the thing I struggled with the most was wrestling at first. I just didn't. It was hard. I was skinny, lanky, didn't have the best body type for wrestling, I'd say, and just kind of working with my coach again, just really uh, nonstop repetition is kind of what got me to past that and to grow as a wrestler.
Do you do any outsource for your training? Like some fighters, like they have their home base where they train at majority of the time, but then they go a couple weeks at a time somewhere else to kind of pick up something else to add to their repertoire. Do you do any of that, or do you just stay at Elevate MMA and then anything that you need, you try and bring it in?
If I can, I do mostly stay here at Elevate, and I try to bring guys in to work with me. But February of this year, I went to Atlanta for a week, and I trained with ATT Atlanta. It was Diego Lima, Douglas Lima's team, and working with those guys was amazing, and they welcomed me in. So it was cool to get some working with those guys, and I've always kind of watched them on TV. So meeting them in person and seeing they knew who I was, it was kind of it was pretty cool.
How is
But
it? I was gonna say,
sorry.
how is it like to pick their brains and to like kind of just dissect what you can learn from them? Because Douglas Lima is a former champion, of course, so that's a big name there for you to be able to go there, train with him, and get to see how they do run things over there.
Right. No, that it definitely boosted my confidence because I talked with Diego mostly. I saw Douglas a few times, but I didn't really get to have very many conversations with him.
Yeah.
But it made me realize that we're doing something right here because it was a very similar practice to the ones that I would run or our coaches here would run us through. And talking to him, he's just a normal human being, a good, down to earth Christian. So it just kind of goes to show, and it showed me that we're all just people. We just different opportunities fought on a bigger stage.
Now, what's a typical training week like for you? Off schedule, or like when you got a fight about to come up? Is it any different? Do you switch things up when you have a fight book, or is it usually just the same routine?
I try to. I've pretty much like live in a fight camp, and I've tried to kind of slow that down this time, especially after that fight. I broke my hand, so I'm getting surgery on Thursday. But a typical week, I do a lot of running. So every day, Monday through Sunday, I run 5 miles first thing in the morning. We have our noon practices Monday through Friday, where we do either sparring, wrestling, or jiu-jitsu, kind of depending on the day. And then I have another practice at night, 6 p.m. And again, if I have a fight coming up, I get the classes covered by somebody, and I can stay here and off to the side and pull people off to the side and work stuff specific for that fight camp. So this past fight, again, I was running 5 miles in the morning. I was doing my sparring and my training at noon, and then Tuesday, Thursday, we do pads around 6, and then Monday, Wednesday, usually do wrestling drills around 6.
I know at the gym you have a couple of other fighters that are fighting professionally right now, and one of them actually just came off a victory not too long ago. Do you do any coaching for them at all, or do you leave that to other people?
I'll help out where I can, and those guys are right there with me. There's Kuba
Yeah,
Kashuba, Polish guy at my gym.
yeah.
We have Steve Kozlow, another good guy from around here. Trey Waters, another good pro. I think 6-0 for Trey, 5-0 for Steve, and 6-0 for Kuba. So they're all undefeated pros, and they did really well as amateurs as well. And I'll help them out best I can. I work with Kuba a lot. Me and him are kind of like he's my main drilling partner for wrestling, striking, and jiu-jitsu. Um, but they outsource as well. I know Trey and Steve train at Fusion quite often. Kuba
Yeah.
primarily stays here in Jacksonville and works with me. He has his boxing coach and his and I think his dad works a lot with him as well. Um, but yes, I do. I coach a lot of amateur fighters and quite a few pros as well.
Is that something that you can see that you could possibly do for time after you're done fighting? I know it's a long time away, but is that something that you've thought about doing because you've opened up this gym, or are you just
Ab-
right now thinking about fighting right now and then making sure that the gym is running and accessible for all the fighters that come in to train?
it's definitely a struggle sometimes, but I'm trying to juggle both. Like I want to make sure the gym is successful. Um, I do still coach, but I plan on coaching more and being more of a coach figure after I'm done fighting. And like you said, right now I'm primarily focused on me winning these fights, getting in shape, which in turn will make the gym more successful.
Now, going back to, of course, your career. Last year, you fought in June against Peterson. That was your last fight on the regional scene in June. No more than 3 weeks to a month later, the UFC comes calling and asks you to take a fight on short notice against top 15 ranked at the time, Daniel Rodriguez. How did that come about? And then uh, what did you do to prep for that? Since you only had a couple weeks to get ready for it.
It was my manager called me and he said we have a short notice UFC opportunity, and of course I'm not going to turn that down, especially if there's a multiple fight contract along with it. Um, I definitely thought I could beat D-Rod, and I still think I can, but I think it was a 7 or 8 day notice, and
Yeah.
those I've only been on a plane a handful of times, so flying is still kind of a new thing to me. And there was a lot more medicals to be done for the UFC fights opposed to a regional fight. So there was a lot of time spent like good doctors traveling. There wasn't too much I could do to prepare because when you're that close, you don't really want to be sparring too hard, anyways. You don't want to be beating your body up that bad. So I just came off that fight with Peterson, so I was kind of taking it a little bit more easier. My shins, I think, were banged up a little bit from that fight, so I wasn't really even running that much, or I wasn't really training or sparring. But I went into that fight confident, but didn't really have a clear mindset or a clear game plan of how I was going to win it or what I was going to do to win the fight, and it didn't play out in my favor.
Yeah, of course. Then you come in, and a couple weeks ago, you were supposed to fight against Koske. He had to pull out. They bring in Evan Elder to come in. what is it like to get a replacement fighter to come in there? Because you were training for a couple of months for Kosuke, and then to have basically the same thing that happened to Rodriguez when he got you to come in on short notice. You had a short notice opponent in Elder. How do you deal with the switch up of opponents so short to fight week? Do you have to switch things up with training, or do you just go, I've been training this long, I'm just going to stick with what I'm doing?
I just stuck with what I was doing. I had some hiccups in my training camp as well. Everybody around here has been getting sick, so I was sick right before that fight. I was taking antibiotics till Wednesday, the week of the fight. I popped my knee about 2 weeks out to where I couldn't really walk that well the next day, but it slowly but surely started recovering. So I had to kind of cut the sparring and the hard training out a little sooner than I normally would for a fight. Um, and also Evan Elder is tough, and watching his fights, he didn't really have very many holes. He had good wrestling, good jiu-jitsu, great striking, and he was 7-0. Anytime you're fighting an undefeated guy, they're not used to losing, so they're there to win. So that definitely played a role. Kind of got in my head a little bit, but when we got there, me and my team, we just sat in the hotel, locked ourselves away, and focused. We watched as many videos, as much film on Elder as we could, and we got a good game plan. I definitely wanted to get him to the ground. I wanted to stand with him a little bit more, but he approached the fight differently than I thought he would too. Like watching his other fights, he had a lot of volume on his feet, throwing long combinations, and then mostly stood orthodox. And then when he fought me, he was mostly southpaw. So he wasn't looking for combinations. He was looking for that one big shot to knock me out or one big kick to knock me out. So it was a little bit different than what I was expecting, but just adapt and overcome.
What did you learn from the Rodriguez fight that you were able to instill into the Elder fight? Because, of course, you came on short notice for your debut, but then this one, you basically had a full fight camp. Was there something that you picked from that and was like, okay, I've learned this. Let me make sure I make the corrections for this fight so I don't make the same mistake? Because you came in there and you looked like a totally different fighter. You looked like you're more in the zone. You're ready. It seemed like you got your game plan going. You got him down as much as possible. You had him in those submission locks basically for the last 2 rounds, which I was surprised that they didn't tap at because you had him in very tight. You just were very dominant. And then I also felt that maybe he seems like he's too small for the division. He feels like more like a lightweight than a welterweight. Did you see that same thing as well?
Yeah, I definitely thought I may have been a little bit bigger. I'm not the biggest welterweight either. All my amateur fights were at 55, and I think my first 3 pro fights were at 55. So I walk around 185, maybe. Sometimes I'll get down to like 182 walking around. So if that 65 division, I've talked about this before, this 165 would be a perfect weight class for me.
Yeah.
I don't think I was too much heavier. I think he was probably like 180 the night of the fight, and I was like 183, 84. I don't think there was a significant size difference. But yeah, he was coming up from lightweight. I know he's done 1 or 2 welterweight fights in the past, but he definitely was a smaller welterweight. But I am as well, it seems like. So, but I'd say the biggest thing I learned from the D-Rod fight going into the Evan Elder fight was just to treat it like I did all my regional fights. For the first UFC fight, I was just starstruck. I was on top of the world. I wasn't really taking it as serious. I wasn't as focused as I was. And this fight, I was focused. We were there for one reason, and it wasn't to enjoy being in the UFC or to enjoy being in Vegas or anything like that. The focus was to get in there and win that fight against Elder.
Now, knowing that you're in the UFC now, what has it been like to deal with the heavy schedule of being up there in the highest mark of MMA? Because they run things to a T. How is fight week compared to on the regionals? Because I know in the UFC you got your obligations. They do the media, they do the weigh-ins. You got to be ready to go, and then of course you got all the day of that they get you right in there and get you ready to go. How's that whole process been for you?
It's definitely more professional with the UFC. I enjoy it. I enjoy everything being on schedule. I fought for some pretty good regional promotions, or in my opinion, they're very good. That really helped me prepare, and they were pretty similar to the UFC, opposed or except for the media side. There was no media day or anything like that. I was just sending pictures for the posters and stuff. But Combat Night was a very good regional promotion for me. Titan FC was pretty good as well. Um, but the big difference is being chauffeured to and from places. Everything's like you said, a tight schedule. We're down in the lobby at 2:30 to be driven to the Apex on time at 2:45. So everything's on schedule, and also getting all the Venom gear and make a little bit more money. So it's definitely the NFL of MMA.
Now, you mentioned that you're going to have surgery on your hand. How long are you going to be out for, and when are you looking to get back in for your third fight?
The doctor said I won't be able to train for 8 weeks and not punch for 12, but I'm hoping to shorten that. Last time I had surgery on my hand, he said the same thing, and I was back to sweating and training at 2 weeks once I got the stitches out. So I just couldn't punch until about at least 8 weeks later. So I'm thinking I definitely want to fight ASAP. I'm ready to go now if my hand wasn't hurt. I wish I could get right back to it because I felt so good last fight. And it was great to go all 3 rounds because it's fun. I had 15 minutes there of actually fighting, opposed to all my other fights have been first round finishes, so I'm kind of in and out. So I got to actually soak up some of the time being in the octagon. But hopefully, again, by the end of the year, I fight again, get the hand surgery done, start training, do a good 8-week camp, and then get right back to it.
Do you think it was beneficial? I remember hearing you say something in another interview that you thought it was nice that you went to decision in this fight because you've never gone to decision in your career. How beneficial do you think it will be for you, knowing that since now you're at the UFC, that you want to be able to train yourself if you have to go 3 or 5 rounds?
I definitely learned what it feels like to go all three. It's you're always tired. I wasn't. My gas tank felt pretty good. My arms were a little fatigued from squeezing those head arm chokes. But other than that, my wind felt good. And it almost makes me want to do five round fight. I mean, the whole fight I was looking for the finish. I definitely wanted to finish those head and arm chokes. I wanted to stop him with ground and pound. Evan Elder is tough as nails, and he didn't stop moving the entire time. So I couldn't really control the position and to land super hard strikes or finishing strikes. But it definitely gave me the confidence that I can go 3 rounds no problem.
The one thing that I noticed in that fight was the high praise from Daniel Cormier. That whole fight, he was just saying very good things about you. He made it a comment that you're one of his new favorite fighters now. How does that feel to have a guy like that with so much background and pedigree in the sport to give you high praise at the performance that you put into the octagon?
When I went back and watched the video the fight with the commentary, it made me feel great. I kind of gave me goosebumps. I mean, DC's one of my favorite guys. I love watching his breakdowns. He's one of the best wrestlers there is in MMA. And when he did a breakdown on one of my takedowns, it was definitely surreal. It was a really cool moment. And hearing the praise from him definitely it made me feel great. Obviously.
Oh yeah, because this is Daniel Cormier. He's a double champ in the sport, and he has in the world of wrestling, he has so much background in that. And then just like you said, you never really wrestled; you just kind of learned it on the go. And he made you sound like you've been wrestling for years. He talked you up, and I thought that was great because like you did dominate. You took him down several times. You were able to transition into the choke, that same choke, I think 3, 4, 5 times, and you had him on the mat for a majority of the fight. I think moving forward, knowing how you did the first fight to the second fight, I can only imagine what you're gonna do coming out of the injury going into your third fight. When I looked at your past, there's a couple of guys that I saw that you fought that are in the UFC right now, and maybe you might be able to fight them again. Like there's a guy like Ignacio Bahamondes that you fought. Of course, you're not going to be able to avenge the loss to Mike Perry because he's a bare knuckle. And like, is that something that you look at and then you're like, are you looking at opponents down the line? You're like, oh, this is a guy that I might want to fight.
I should actually do that. I haven't really looked at very many opponents, and I haven't been following fights as well as I should, or as much as I
Yeah.
used to. With everything going on, the gym, me training full time, it's hard to find time. But no, I'm going to start looking at the roster and trying to decide on the guy to fight next. But the goal eventually is to fight Kamaru Usman,
Yeah.
whoever holds the title, and that's him. I mean, I've got a long way to go. I've only won one fight in the UFC so far, but I plan on continuing to win and to get a number next to my name, and then get hopefully in there with him and win the belt, bring it home to Jacksonville.
Exactly. But other than that, before we get going, I just want to give the floor to you. If there's anybody that you want to thank, anybody that you want to shout out in your camp, the floor is yours.
Okay. First of all, Cord Pove, my partner, my striking coach, Grappler Mag. It's they sponsor me. They have a website. They're on Instagram. It's just at Grappler Mag. My training partners TK, Josh Lee, everybody here at the gym, the guys at Gracie Baja Jacksonville, Professor Roberto, Corey Taylor, Brian Brown, and all the guys at 10th Planet Jacksonville. Shelby Corinne, she helps me run a lot of the classes. Steve Kozlo, Trey Waters, Kuba Kashua. I have a lot of good people behind me that kind of help with my success.
Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today. I know you're getting ready to have surgery. We wish you a speedy recovery. Hopefully, we see you in the next couple of months. Hopefully, the rehab and everything goes faster than what it is, and we're looking forward to seeing how well you do the rest of your UFC career.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. It was good being on here with you.
Thank you so much for coming on. You have a good day.
You as well.
Yeah. Once again, that is Preston Parsons. He's a UFC newcomer. He just came off of a decision victory over Evan Elder. Of course, I'm your host, Cage. This is Cage by IQ, best place for MMA content. We ask you guys to follow and subscribe to the channel on Twitter, Instagram, Twitch, and YouTube. We brought back the Cage My IQ YouTube channel. So if you can hit the subscribe button and notification bell on YouTube, and please smash the like button down below, and also hit us up in the comment section and let us know what you think of this interview. But other than that, I thank you guys for tuning in to the interview with UFC newcomer Preston the Pressure Parsons. And we will talk to you guys next time. Thanks for tuning in.